فألهمها فجورها وتقواها قد أفلح من زكاها وقد خاب من دساها كذبت ثمود بطغواها إذ انبعث أشقاها فقال لهم رسول الله ناقة الله وسقياها فكذبوه فعقروها فدمدم عليهم ربهم بذنبهم فسواها ولا يخاف عقباها صدق الله العلي العظيم.
آج کی رات تجھے گودی میں سلا لوں میرے اصغر راجا آج کی رات تجھے گودی میں سلا لوں میرے اصغر راجا لوری ارمانوں سے بھرپور سنا لوں میرے اصغر راجا آج کی رات تجھے گودی میں سلا لوں میرے اصغر راجا تیر کے آگے میرے لال تجھے ہونا ہے دیکھ کر تیری ہنسی ظلم نے بھی رونا ہے جو طریقے ہیں لڑائی کے سکھا دوں میرے اصغر راجا آج کی رات تجھے گودی میں سلا لوں میرے اصغر راجا پہلے اللہ کا میں شکر بجا لاؤں گی دیکھ کر خون تیرا لال میں مر جاؤں گی میں تجھے موت کی ہچکی سے بچا لوں میرے اصغر راجا آج کی رات تجھے گودی میں سلا لوں میرے اصغر راجا تجھ کو ایک بار دفن بابا تیرے کر دیں گے، پھر تجھے نیزے ثقیفہ کے وہاں ڈھونڈیں گے، دشت کی گرم ہواؤں سے بچا لوں، میرے اصغر آجا، آج کی رات تجھے گودی میں سلا لوں، میرے اصغر آجا، تیری معصوم سکینہ کو پلا کے پانی، کل تیری پیاس بجھائے گا علی کا ثانی، میں تجھے دیکھ کے پیاس اپنی بجھا لوں، میرے اصغر آجا، آج کی رات تجھے گودی میں سلا لوں، میرے اصغر آجا، لاش اصغر کی جو دیکھی تو اٹھی ایک بکا، ہائے شام غریباں کو سکینہ نے کہا، ہو کے پابند تجھے پانی پلا لوں، میرے اصغر آجا، آج کی رات تجھے گودی میں سلا لوں، میرے اصغر آجا، ہے تو آخر ہو یہ ماں، کہتا ہے زاہد کیا یقین، ڈھونڈتی ہوگی اسے رو رو کے راہوں میں کہیں، کہتی ہوگی کہ تیرے ناز اٹھا لوں، میرے اصغر آجا، آج کی رات تجھے گودی میں سلا لوں، میرے اصغر آجا، لوری ارمانوں سے بھرپور سنا لوں، میرے اصغر آجا، آج کی رات تجھے گودی میں سلا لوں، میرے اصغر، 'Asghar' آجا.
محمد وآل محمد صلوات.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
O my infant Ali Asghar, remember the words of your mother. Tomorrow when you soar to the heaven and meet your grandmother, to be cuddled and snuggled in her lap, insist no more. Broken already are her ribs from the nails of the door. Conceal the wound of the three-pronged arrow in your tiny neck. O Asghar, conceal the wound of the three-pronged arrow in your tiny neck, for Zahra has to still bear the gruesome cuts of the dagger in Hussein's neck. Abad wallah ya Zahra, ma nansa Husseina. It is our promise, O Zahra, we will never forget your Hussein.
رات نہ ڈھلنا کہ اجڑ جائے گی زینب. رات نہ ڈھلنا کہ اجڑ جائے گی زینب. بھائی سے دم صبح بچھڑ جائے گی زینب. اے رات نہ ڈھلنا کہ اجڑ جائے گی زینب. سونے دے سکینہ کو کہ پھر سو نہ سکے گی. رونے بھی جو چاہے گی تو پھر رو نہ سکے گی. اصغر سے ملاقات تو پھر ہو نہ سکے گی. اے رات نہ ڈھلنا کہ اجڑ جائے گی زینب. گھبرائے ہوئے لال ہے سہمی ہوئی مائیں. جی بھر کے میں دے لوں علی اکبر کو دعائیں. لینا ہے ابھی آن محمد کی بلائیں. اے رات نہ ڈھلنا کہ اجڑ جائے گی زینب. اے رات بکھر جا تیرے بس میں ہو جہاں تک. مٹ جائیں گے کل آلے پیمبر کے نشاں تک. باقی ہے یہ منظر علی اکبر کی اذاں تک. اے رات نہ ڈھلنا کہ اجڑ جائے گی زینب. ہر چاند کے بچوں کی ابھی پیاس ہے باقی.
کچھ آس ہے باقی لیکن میرا بھائی میرا عباس ہے باقی اے رات نہ ڈھلنا کہ اجڑ جائے گی زینب باقی ہے ابھی آل محمد کا سفینہ بیٹی کے سلانے کو ہے شبیر کا سینہ جھولا علی اصغر کا جھلاتی ہے سکینہ اے رات نہ ڈھلنا کہ اجڑ جائے گی زینب کل کون سنے گا یہ میری آہوں بکا بھی ہوگا تہ خنجر میرا بھائی کا گلا بھی خیمہ تو کجا سر پہ نہ ہوگی یہ ردا بھی اے رات نہ ڈھلنا کہ اجڑ جائے گی زینب بائی سے دم صبح بچھڑ جائے گی زینب
محمد وآل محمد صلوات اللہم صل علی محمد وآل محمد تھا یہ بانو کا بیان تھا یہ بانو کا بیان کس کو دوں اب لوریاں ڈھونڈتی پھرتی ہے مادر ہے میرا گھر کہاں تھا یہ بانو کا بیان کس کو دوں اب لوریاں ڈھونڈتی پھرتی ہے مادر ہے میرا گھر کہاں تیرا جھولا جھل گیا اے میرے تشنا دہاں ڈھونڈتی پھرتی ہے مادر ہے میرا گھر کہاں خون بھرا کرتا تیرا ہائے وہ بھی چھن گیا خون بھرا کرتا تیرا ہائے وہ بھی چھن گیا اب جیوں کس کس کے سہارے پاس میرے کیا رہا زندگی ہے رائے گاہ عمر بھر مانو خواں ڈھونڈتی پھرتی ہے مادر ہے میرا گھر کہاں خالی جھولا دیکھ کر اے میرے نور نظر خالی جھولا دیکھ کر اے میرے نور نظر آنکھ فریادی ہے میری اور روتا ہے جگر سو گئے ہو تم کہاں چین پائے کیسے ماں ڈھونڈتی پھرتی ہے مادر ہے میرا گھر کہاں میں مسافر شام کی ختم ہدیہ رام کی میں مسافر شام کی ختم ہدیہ رام کی قید ہو کر جا رہی ہوں گرد ہے عالم کی بند چکی ہے رسیاں ہم کہاں اب تم کہاں ڈھونڈتی پھرتی ہے مادر ہے میرا گھر کہاں جام عشقوں کے پیو آج کی شب سو رہو جام عشقوں کے پیو آج کی شب سو رہو عمر لگ جائے ہماری تم یوں ہی جیتے رہو تم پہ قرباں میری جان اے قرار بے کساں ڈھونڈتی پھرتی ہے مادر ہے میرا گھر کہاں تھا یہ بانو کا بیان کس کو دوں اب لوریاں ڈھونڈتی پھرتی ہے مادر ہے میرا گھر کہاں صلوات
عظم اللہ اجورنا و اجورکم بمصابنا بالحسین علیہ السلام. Assalamu alaikum. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Ashura night program. Tonight, Shab-e Ashur program will begin at 11:30 p.m. Please join JRY and JTB after the main program with Ziyarat Nahya, conclude with Noha. You can join via jafri.org/live. More information on the screen. Ashura Day online program for tomorrow, Sunday, August the 30th. Morning Majlis will be at 7 a.m. with recitation of Quran. Majlis will be recited by Maulana Sayyid Sakhir Hussain Shah and will conclude with Ziyarat. Ladies program at 9 a.m. relayed through jafri.org/live/private link Majlis. Majlis will be recited by Zakira Tahira Qasim Ali in English and Gujarati. Amal of Ashura will begin at 10:30 a.m. Amal will be led by Brother Hussein Darsi and his team. Our Ashur program to begin at 1:45 p.m. with recitation of Quran and ending with Ziyarat Tazia. Majlis will be recited by Sayyid Asad Jafri in English and Maulana Ali Murtaza Zaidi in Urdu. Both Majlis will be simultaneously. Our Kabristan Majlis will begin at 5 p.m. online with Quran, followed by Majlis, and Majlis will be recited by Maulana Sakhir Hussain Shah and will conclude with Ziyarat al-Nahiya. Our Sham-e Ghariba program will start at 8:40 p.m. with recitation of Quran. Majlis will be recited by Sayyid Asad Jafri in English and inshallah will conclude with Ziyarat. All these programs will be relayed on the jafri.org/live. More information on the screens. Ashura Day Niyaz. Tomorrow volunteers will be packing and delivering niyaz to members of our community. Niyaz from the JCC will be delivered from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. Curbside pickup at 10:30 a.m. to 1 p.m. and again from 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. At this time, we'll get the opportunity to give your respect and convey your salams to our Shahada of Karbala. If you're only visiting for Alam and Tabut, you do not need to register. Niyaz from the Masumin Islamic Center and Razavi Community Center will be delivered between 3:30 p.m. to 5:30 p.m. Curbside pickup will be from 3:30 p.m. to 5 p.m. only in Masumin Islamic Center. Alhamdulillah, we had over 600 volunteers registered. Due to COVID-19 restrictions, we had to randomly select 150 for packing volunteers for tomorrow morning. Those who are selected should have been added into the WhatsApp group and received an email. Those who did not get selected, an email has been sent out. I thank all the volunteers, and inshallah, those who did not get selected, we will contact you for near future events. Dua Shafa Mariz, please join me and raise your hand in reciting Dua Shafa Mariz for all those in need of our duas, especially those listed on the screen. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Amma yujibul mustarehza da'a wa yakshifisu. 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 Irhamna bi rahmatika ya arhamar rahimin. Ba Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. May I request to recite Surah Fatiha for all the marhumin. Al-Fatiha. Now I would like to call upon the President of ICIJ, Al-Hajj Habib Bhai Megji, to the podium. Please welcome him from your homes with a loud salawat. Followed by, we'll have Imran Datu from London live to recite Mashya. For Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad salawat.
Minash Shaitanir Rajim. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Said Asad Jafri, respected scholars, my elders, brothers and sisters, youths, and our children. أعظم الله أجورنا وأجوركم بمسابنا بالحسين عليه السلام. We begin tonight by conveying our condolences to the Imam of our time, Imam Mahdi alayhi salam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad, on the shahadat of Hazrat Ali Asghar and Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Indeed, we are currently living in an unusual time commemorating the martyrdom of Imam Hussein alayhi salam and his companions very differently than in previous years. On behalf of the Board of Directors, I would like to sincerely thank all of you for your understanding, for your cooperation, and also in keeping up with the processes and protocols related to COVID-19 guidelines. At the ISIJ of Toronto, Alhamdulillah, we have been blessed with excellent scholars and Nawha and Marthia reciters. The feedback, Alhamdulillah, has been extremely positive. Please let us recite one loud salawat for all our speakers and reciters, both in the ladies and in the gents. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. We sincerely pray to the Almighty to accept our azadari and give us all the tawfiq to make meaningful changes in our daily lives, to uphold the principles and values of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, his family, and his companions. In summary, as Sayyid Asad said yesterday, the onus is on every one of us to fill the prescription and act on the advices we hear, inshallah. Many of you are anxious to hear the next steps with respect to the opening of our centers. The ISIJ Board of Directors met this evening and have approved the start of Maghrib Isha prayers here at JCC on Wednesday, September 2nd, 2020. The Board of Directors will also have a call right after the 12 days with the COVID-19 response team, including Dr. Sivji and Dr. Boga, to consider opening our centers for Thursday night programming and Wafat programmings, and also to discuss the limitations of age for 70 and under 15. Having said that, we will need all the support from all of you in following the protocols. For example, if there's a pre-registration required, we need all of you to pre-register so we have the record as well if something goes wrong and we need to report to the health officials. Of course, if we open the centers and if the cases continue to increase, we will possibly close down the centers if and when required. We wanted to inform all of you that the ISIJ of Toronto will be making a $50,000 contribution towards the new Cortellucci Vaughan Hospital in the next few days in the name of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. This will bring our total contribution for this new hospital to $250,000. We are very thankful to our matching donor, Brother Latif Fazal, who contributed half of this amount and made ISIJ of Toronto very proud in our extended community. May the Almighty bless Latif, his family, and all our members and participants. Our annual general meeting is planned for September 27th at 2:30 p.m. and notice has already been sent to all members. We also have an election of the speaker and one member each for the governance and ombudsman committees. Nomination deadline is September 11th, 2020. In the next few days, we will start sending reminders as well. Our volunteers are already working hard in different capacities and also in preparation for a very sacred day of Ashura tomorrow, with Niyaz delivery and curbside pickup as well. Please recite one loud salawat for all our volunteers in both the ladies and in gents. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. Mu'mineen, in summary, we will continue to stay the course. please continue to follow the COVID-19 guidelines. Please pre-register for Salat and any other programs. Please sign up as a volunteer, as we will need your help as we start opening our centers in the near future. And please prepare for a long recovery ahead. Tonight is the night of Ashura. Who knows who will be alive next year? Who knows whether any one of us will have the opportunity to commemorate the Aza of Imam Hussein and his companions next year. Many who were with us last year, both young and old, are no longer with us today. Please donate generously towards our Muharram Safar Fund, and please take time to renew your membership. All of you have heard our treasurer, Brother Abbas Lakha, with respect to our budget, and have watched the video of how to renew your membership online. Lastly, let's recite Surah Fatiha for all our marhumins. Al-Fatiha.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم عظم الله أجورنا وأجوركم بمثابنا بالحسين عليه السلام. سب سے پہلے مجھے یہ کہنا ہے کہ ماشاءاللہ روز میں آپ کا JCC کا پروگرام دیکھتا ہوں اور ویڈیوز دیکھتا ہوں، اور یہ کہنا چاہتا ہوں کہ افسوس کی بات یہ ہے کہ میں وہاں آپ سب کے ساتھ نہیں ہو سکتا، اور خاص طور پر امام بارگاہ میں ہم عزاداری نہیں کر سکتے. تو اسی سے ہم دعا کرتے ہیں خدا سے کہ انشاءاللہ یہ جو کووڈ کا زمانہ ہے وہ جلد سے جلد انشاءاللہ نکل جائے دنیا سے، تاکہ ہم پھر سے امام بارگاہ میں جا سکتے ہیں اور جا کر عزاداری کریں انشاءاللہ، جیسے کرنا چاہیے، جیسے بیوی کو پرسہ دینا چاہیے انشاءاللہ. آج کی رات ہم جناب حضرت علی اصغر علیہ السلام کی شہادت کو یاد کرتے ہیں، تو ان کے حوالے سے آپ کے سامنے ایک کلام پیش کروں گا. آپ سب کی اجازت ہے تو جہاں جہاں آپ ہیں اپنے گھر کو روشن کر دیجیے گا ایک صلوات کے ساتھ. اللہم صلی علی محمد و آل محمد وعجل فرجہ. اے میرے بے زبان تم رہ گئے کہاں، اصغر جیے گی کیسے تیرے بغیر ماں. اے میرے بے زبان تم رہ گئے کہاں، اصغر جیے گی کیسے تیرے بغیر ماں. چہرہ وہ چاند جیسا، چہرہ وہ چاند جیسا کیسے بھلائے ماں. اصغر جیے گی کیسے تیرے بغیر ماں. کیا وقت آ گیا ہے بانوں کی بے کسی پر، غربت پہ تیری ماتم کیسے کرے گی مادر. آدا نے باندھ دی ہے، آدا نے باندھ دی ہے ہاتھوں میں رسیاں. اصغر جیے گی کیسے تیرے بغیر ماں. ہمت پہ ماں تمہاری قربان کیوں نہ جائے، سنتی ہے تیر کھا کر تم رن میں مسکرائے. مادر کی لاج رکھ لی، مادر کی لاج رکھ لی، شاباش میری جان. اصغر جیے گی کیسے، اصغر جیے گی کیسے تیرے بغیر ماں. اور مادر کی ہے وصیت بیٹا خیال رکھنا، گودی میں ان کی اصغر جانے کی ضد نہ کرنا. پہلے ہی ہے شکستہ، پہلے ہی ہے شکستہ دادی کی پسلیاں. اصغر جیے گی کیسے تیرے بغیر ماں. دشوار ہو گیا ہے رن میں تمہارا جینا، اب خالی گود جا کر ماں کیا کرے مدینہ. مجھ کو وہیں بلا لو، مجھ کو وہیں بلا لو، اے لال ہو جہاں. اصغر جیے گی کیسے تیرے بغیر ماں. یہ اجڑی گود بیٹا، یہ اجڑی گود بیٹا کیسے سکون پائے، حالت پہ تیری ماں کی ہنستے ہیں شام والے. ارے دامن میں ہے تمہارے، دامن میں ہے تمہارے جھولے کی لکڑیاں. اصغر جیے گی کیسے تیرے بغیر ماں. اور مقطع کا کہ روتے تھے سب تکلم، ایک ماں نے جب کہا تھا پیغام کربلا میں جا کر ہوائے دینا. زندہ کے در پہ اب بھی، زندہ کے در پہ اب بھی بیٹھی ہے ایک ماں. اصغر جیے گی کیسے تیرے بغیر ماں. اے میرے بے زبان تم رہ گئے کہاں، اصغر جیے گی کیسے تیرے بغیر ماں، تیرے بغیر ماں. الفاتحة مع الصلوات. اللهم صل على محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. عظم الله لكم الأجر يا شيعة بقرب محرم، وما هي إلا أيام، وننادي يا حسين يا أبا عبد الله. عظم الله لك الأجر يا رسول الله، ويا أمير المؤمنين، ويا فاطمة يا سيدتي نساء العالمين. إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله الذي لا يبلغ مدحته القائلون، ولا يحصي نعماءه العادون، ولا يؤدي حقه المجتحدون، الذي لا يدركه بعد الحمم ولا يناله غوص الفطن. ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين، حبيب قلوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا وشفيع ذنوبنا، سيدنا ومولانا أبي القاسم محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم، وآل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين، لا سيما بقية الله في الأرضين، صاحب العصر والزمان، خليفة الرحمن، إمام الإنس والجان. ولعن الله أعداهم أجمعين إلى يوم الدين. أما بعد، فقد قال الله وقوله الحق. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. وكذلك جعلناكم أمة وسطا لتكونوا شهداء على الناس. صدق الله العلي العظيم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. A discussion on social justice has been our ongoing topic. Tonight is lecture number 10. The attempt now for the past 10 nights, as we look to close out our Ashra this year in 2020, 1442, was to begin to scratch the surface on the topic of justice. Given, of course, what's happening around the world, and given this idea that a lot of my youth, and maybe us as well, we have so many unanswered questions about and how to process what's happening right now all over the world. And so our journey now has, it began from a discussion on collectivism. We talked about the irada of Allah, the will of Allah. We talked about the importance of understanding the role of evil in our development. We talked about how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala cannot and will not do injustice. That, of course, led to 3 lectures on individual justice, adl infiradi. And we broke down that topic of individual justice by looking at the injustice we do to ourselves, to our children, and to our women. And for the past 2 nights after that, we looked at the mawani', the barriers of justice. Meaning, like I mentioned to all of you 2 nights ago, that while we know a lot, where I struggle at least is the conversion of that ilm into amal. I find it difficult to switch the lam and the mim in that one word. The ilm becomes amal. And there are barriers. All of us know, all of us crave justice. But there's reasons why today that justice simply is not implemented. We talked about the me-centric life and individualism 2 nights ago, and last night we looked at elitism. That when we believe without any merit at all, completely unearned, that I believe I am higher than another person based on something that I have not earned, simply given to me by accident, then I have no problem doing what? Doing injustice on the person in front of me. And that leads us to tonight. And as we've said in our examples, we are now, of course, landing into our destination. All of this 9 nights was all to get us ready for our Savior and talk about our Imam. We cannot have a discussion on social justice without having a discussion on the Imam of our time. And so tonight, I want to use several of the points that I have talked to all of you with in the past 9 nights. All of these were small links of one chain, carefully thought out, carefully presented to bring us, all of us, together to this destination of now, with all of these principles now, we can begin to now truly prepare ourselves for the arrival of that Imam who will come and be the leader, the Hujjat, the Wali, the Imam of the social justice movement. You know, you asked me 15, 20 years ago, a lot of us perhaps couldn't understand the arrival of the Imam, the mission of the Imam. But when you examine a lot of what's happening in every corner of this globe to various groups that's happening to, you can kind of see the picture now coming into focus. What was once issues that were very, very different across the globe. The Middle East had their issues. Europe had its issues. North America had its issues. Africa had its issues, and so on and so on and so forth. Maybe 20, 25 years ago, they were looked at as separate pieces of the puzzle. But now, if you were to summarize the fight in Yemen, to the fight in Iraq, to the fight in the US, to the fight within ourselves, all of it now points to one reality, and that's a need for justice, and specifically a need for social justice. And now thus this picture now comes into focus, and as every corner of the globe screams, begs for some form of justice, we, as the lovers and hopefully the followers of the Ahlul Bayt, understand that while every group is screaming for some light, that light for us is in ghaibat right now. And so tonight, I want to speak a little bit about the Imam. First of all, before I begin that, all these 9 nights was meant to not simply discuss certain principles, they were meant for us to absorb, and that's the word I'll use, absorb the principles of justice into our essence, into our spirituality. When we begin to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with the understanding of justice, that I'm giving him this worship because he is worthy of that worship. It's his haqq that he should be worshipped. If any entity deserves to be a ma'bud in this world, in this universe, in these cosmos, it's him. After all, very famously, Imam Ali alayhi salatu wasalam in Nahj al-Balagha, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad, describes, right, the levels of the abid, the levels of the worshipper, and says that there are those who treat this worship as a business transaction, right? The tujjar, the businessman, he does what? Or she does what? She does tijarat with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I'm buying, you're selling. I'm selling, you're buying. What am I selling? I'm selling my worship, and I'm buying eternity of heaven from you. The second level is that of an abd, the slave. And the entire mission of a slave is don't upset the master. If you upset the master, you will now go through your consequences. So we worship Allah entirely to do what? To not upset him. Because the manifestation of his anger is the hellfire. We don't want it. The highest level of worship that Mawla talks about is that of the ihrar, where now you are free. I am free. Free of what? Free of the wants of heaven and the fear of hell. I worship him because he's worthy of that worship. That only happens when we absorb the reality of justice inside of us. Where now, if I don't worship him truly for him, fi sabilillah, there's a right on him that I haven't fulfilled. And when that begins to happen, it becomes absorbed in our existence. Then what ends up happening is what I want for all of us, that we end up looking in this world through the lens of injustice and justice. Now everything, from the consumption of my food in the house, to my wasting water at the tap, to me stomping on animals outside in the park, to me using plastic and styrofoam and not bringing my own plates to the center. All of these now will start to make sense to me. I'll become sensitive, I'll become aware, I'll become individuals who, attempting to uphold these principles, because why? Justice now has been absorbed inside of me. So not only do I see my child or my spouse or my parents as someone who deserves my justice, I start to see everything around me, even those things that are inanimate, animate, whatever the case may be. And that's why when you look at the way the Ahlul Bayt present justice, it's beautiful. Imam Sajjad alayhi salatu wasalam, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad, in his Rasatul Huquq, his treatise on rights, incredible. He goes so far as says your organs have rights over you. The mu'adhin who gives the adhan has a right over you. Let alone, your father and your mother and your spouse and your child and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's the level that we should begin now to climb towards. Not just the idea of making sure that I treat my children properly, I treat my spouse properly, I treat my parents properly, but what? I treat this universe and this atmosphere and this environment properly. That's why the Deen of Islam is a green deen. And we have to begin to live a green life. Okay? If that means that we switch from plastic to paper, or we stop using styrofoam, if that means that we are conscious about our consumption and we live a life of minimalism, then so be it. But that's also included in the realm of justice. The reality, however, is that this desired level of justice at the society level hasn't been achieved by the human being. I'll give you an example. It's a sports example, so you'll excuse me for those who aren't into sports. Recently, the NBA players and their teams boycotted their playoff games. Based on, of course, what happened to Jacob Blake. Got shot 7 times, he's paralyzed. And their message was that basketball is secondary. The primary focus is that we have a platform, we have some influence, right? And everything from the media channels to the league itself, to companies that sell the merchandise, to our sponsors, all of them rely heavily on us, what? Bouncing the ball. We stop to bounce the ball, maybe they might wake up and say, look, you need to speak out. And so their boycott was based on the idea that they're trying to establish social justice, remove racism from society. Very noble. If you go back 60 years to 1960. 1960, there was a basketball player by the name of Bill Russell, a legend of the game, still alive today. And those who know him, you know him. Has the most rings of anybody in terms of championships. In 1960, 60 years ago, he was the last NBA player to boycott a game. And what was the issue he boycotted? He boycotted the issue that his African-American athletes and teammates were denied service in a hotel in Lexington, Kentucky. Strictly because they were the color they were. So he boycotted a game, knowing full well at that time he was the greatest of that generation. So him not playing had an effect on the tickets, the merchandise, everybody else. 31 years after, in 1991, some of you may remember this, 1991, again a basketball example, I apologize. The NBA Finals were played by the Chicago Bulls and the LA Lakers. It was Jordan's first championship. So Michael Jordan versus Magic Johnson, right? Dream matchup. These were the one of the two biggest basketball stars at that time on the planet. Craig Hodges was a teammate of Michael Jordan on the Chicago Bulls. He actually approached Jordan and Magic Johnson to say, look, in light of the Rodney King beatings in 1991, we should boycott the game one of the finals. If you two boycott this game, there's going to be ruckus, chaos. It'll send a very, very powerful message. It didn't happen, but that movement was present at that moment. Rodney King, at least in my lifetime, was the first taped beating of a black man by a bunch of police officers. It's sad that now we're seeing these videos because we have smartphones. It doesn't mean that all of a sudden now it's been going on. It's been going on for centuries. Now we're actually becoming aware of it. So how many of my African American brothers and sisters have gone through what they've gone through and nobody has any idea? No justice served, the cop moves on, and he has no one to cry or complain to. Jump 61 years later now, in 2020 now, LeBron James, Kawhi Leonard, all these major superstars walk off the court for the exact same issue that occurred 60 years ago. You pick up some of Dr. Martin Luther King's speeches from his civil rights movement in the southern US, you pick up the speeches of Malcolm X, and it, at least to me now, and they're playing everywhere nowadays, it literally sounds like they wrote that speech for 2020. Sometimes just when we think that progress is happening, we've come a long way, it feels like we haven't come a single inch. And sometimes it looks like we resemble that era of Jahiliyyah that the Prophet came to rescue from the brinks of the hellfire. Common bloodshed, disrespecting of women, idol worshiping. One can argue all three now exist today, albeit in different forms. The point I'm trying to make is that the insan, you and I, we've been given our chance. We continue to be given our chance to establish social justice, and we've proven ourselves time and time again that we can't do it alone. And oh man, there's been attempts, right? Protests, boycotts, human rights groups, right? Changing of laws, all sorts of stuff have been, it continues to happen today. And yet we still can't get it right. The people of Yemen continue now. There continues to be a genocide there. The world is quiet. Palestine continues to suffer. The world is quiet. What's happening in China with our Muslim brothers and sisters? The world is quiet. And while I don't want tonight to be about hopelessness, and I will do my level best to inject myself and all of you with a sense of hope, the reality is that we have to accept the fact at the logical level that while we crave and desire and need justice, we are not able as a human race to do it by ourselves. That's been proven. Sometimes I think, when people talk to me about the idea that, the Sharia needs to be updated, Sayyid Assad. The Sharia needs to resemble 2020. The Sharia needs to be as progressive as we are. The Sharia needs to reflect the modernism of society. All of that now to me spells the idea that we actually think that we have advanced. It depends on how you measure advancement. To me, the advancement of society are not by the tools that we use, but by the people that we are looking to become. Meaning advancement of society is not measured outside of you, it's measured inside of you. And dare I say, and some have, progression, forget that, we've regressed. So please, save it. Don't tell me about the progression of the Sharia. Don't tell me about the modern change and update that the Sharia needs. Reflecting what? Reflecting the modern human being? We constantly show our animalistic dimension day in and day out. And we just don't get it. We don't get it. For reasons I talked about for the past 2 nights, right? This me idea, and the idea that I am elite, I am elite. I'm white, so I can sit there, I can do whatever I want to, and I know I can get away with it. And so the idea is that if we can't do it alone, we need divine intervention. Now, why is the question? Why does Allah need to send His hujjat? Because of a discussion I had way back when now, which seems like an eternity, right? A few nights ago, in the beginning of the Ashra, called Naqsul Gharaz. Why did I sit there and give you zahma to know these big terms? If you remember that discussion, I'm sure you do. There's no way you're going to forget my lectures. That's not possible. Is the idea that the unfulfillment of a will when it comes to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is impossible. Do you remember that talk? It was on the Masumin member. Don't forget that talk. There's a reason why I asked you to really strain your brain to understand those concepts, because now at the end of the Ashra, those ingredients come into play. The marinade is ready, the chicken is defrosted, let's pour on the marinade on the chicken and put in the oven. And that, back then I talked about the idea when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wills something, it has to happen. It's impossible that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wills something, it doesn't happen. Not possible. إِذَا أَرَادَ شَيْئًا أَن يَقُولَ لَهُ كُن فَيَكُونُ كُن فَيَكُونُ كُن فَيَكُونُ. When He wills something, He says to it be, and it is. Khalas. That's the khulasa, summary of Allah's irada when He is huwal murid. He is the one who wills. Now, what is it that He wills? Like I mentioned before, وَنُرِيدُ أَن نَمُنَّ عَلَى الَّذِينَ اسْتُضْعِفُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ وَنَجْعَلَهُمْ أَئِمَّةً وَنَجْعَلَهُمُ الْوَارِثِينَ. He says, I desire to raise those who are today considered to be the oppressed. How? I'll make them leaders. I'll make them inheritors. Is there any sign of that happening at the hands of the human being? No. The weak continue to be stepped on by those who are the strong. The poor continue to suffer by those who are rich. And those who have this elite sense inside of them continue to step on those that they believe are inferior to them. So either it's the idea that God's will doesn't get fulfilled, or it's the idea that something has to change. Another ingredient from outside has to be injected in this current situation in order for Allah's will to be fulfilled. And thus enter our 12th Imam. Why do I mention that in the beginning? Because one of the scary traditions for me is that sometimes the hadith says there will be a delay in the arrival of the Imam to the point where his own believers will begin to doubt his reappearance, and then begin to accept fake Mahdis, people who claim to have a connection with the Mahdi, people who claim all these things. They'll easily say, well, it's got to be him, or it's got to be his numainda, it's got to be his representative, it's got to be somebody who knows him, because you know what, how much more dhulm do I have to see in order for me now to understand? But if he doesn't come now, he'll never come, we say. And the important part is, like I said in that speech over there, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. We have to just show a little bit of a glimpse that when he does come, he has enough followers to move it forward. Now the question is, why can't we do it? What is it about us that we are unable now to establish a proper system of social justice? And we are at a crossroads. We're pulled by two different things, okay? And follow me tonight. The first thing we're pulled by is the fact that in our fitrah, in our innate disposition, in our innate nature, we crave justice, okay? Very quickly, I don't want to spend too much time on that. We have something inside of us called the fitrah, okay? The fitrah inside of us is something that is given to us at creation. Our innate disposition. Everybody has it, every human being has it. Muslim, non-Muslim, black, white, green, blue, red, we all have it, right? Woman, man, child, everybody has it. There are certain innate needs that are inside the human being that are not influenced by anybody else. Okay? Examples I always give is that we are innately hungry. We are innately thirsty. The innate love that a mother has for a child. The innate need we have for companionship. We are social beings innately. Okay? And depending on the innate need inside of us, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in His justice now has created an external outlet to fulfill that need. So we are hungry innately, Allah gave us food and sustenance. We are thirsty innately, Allah gave us water. A baby is born in the world crying for food. Nobody teaches that baby how to be hungry. The mother or the father teach them how to fulfill that hunger. Okay? You don't know, my mother's in the audience, whether you are a new mother or you are a grandmother, you don't need to go to school or go through a class that will teach you how to love your child. Yeah, how to train your child, how to raise your child, how to discipline your child, that's fine. But loving your child is innate. Okay? And it's universal. You take a mother from Tanzania, you take a mother from New York City, you take a mother from, let's say, I don't know, Beijing, and you take a mother from Vaughan, Ontario, put them all together, they all talk about the love they have for a child. Expression might be different, but innately there's love. That is where? In the fitrah. One other thing the ulama of akhlaq have determined is that another thing that exists inside the fitrah of the insan is a need for justice. Okay? Now, how do you prove something is part of your innate disposition? Number one, it's universal across the board. I mentioned it already today. Every corner of the globe where you see a cry, it's a cry of the oppressed. It's a cry of the oppressed. Number two, all throughout history, this need for justice has always been there. If you have time, verse number 213 of Surah Al-Baqarah, okay? Talks about Kana Nasu Ummatan Wahida. It's a series of lectures I've done for a different community during these 10 days. I'm not gonna go through all that content, but it's interesting how Allah says the insan was at one point in history, one nation. Okay? Now what that means, there's a beautiful tafsir by Allama Tabatabai rahmatullah alayh, in English now, almizan.org, no dashes, almizan, M-I-Z-A-N.org. It's beautifully laid out by chapter and verses, 213 of Surah Baqarah. Take a moment and read that beautiful tafsir. In it, he talks about the fact that in the beginning of the growth of the human society, man was given this knowledge of its own preservation very, very quickly. Meaning what? That we know in our innate need is the need to preserve our own existence, correct? So we use everything around us and everybody around us to preserve my own existence. Okay? So I rely on farmers to feed me, essentially. Right? I may not make that connection right away. I make that connection by the one who cooks my meal. I rely, let's say, on my car and the gas to get me, let's say, to work. I go to work to get money to preserve my existence. I may use, let's say, for example, I don't know, a camera on my front door for safety, to preserve my safety and my family's safety. You get my point, right? I use inanimate objects around me and I use each other, human beings, to preserve my own existence. And Allama says in the beginning, the human being realized that this is an interdependent, coexisting, harmonized society where not only am I using person A for their preservation, but they're using me for their preservation. In the process, however, because we have potentially evil attributes inside of us, one group would now strip the rights of another group. And thus the entry of law from Allah, right? The Sharia, divine law in the form of prophets, okay? So all the way back then now, there was this need for justice, okay? Every revolution, every civil rights movement, every cry of the oppressed, do your research, has all been about what? Justice. So innately we have this desire for justice. That's why we keep trying and keep trying to get it right. So some of us are quite vocal. We use our social media platforms, or we get on the streets, for example, or we hand out pamphlets, for example, or we use this pulpit, for example. Whatever the case may be, we just don't want to let go of this innate need for justice. It's a strong need we have inside of us. Those things that are innately inside of us are strong needs that don't fade away that easily. And sometimes the need is so strong, it blocks our aql. We actually believe we're doing it when we're not doing it. Remember, one of the things that we have innately inside of our needs, our fitrah, is the need to worship something. Very quickly, is the need to worship something. All throughout history, there's been worship. Random things, the sun, the moon, fire, water, each other, idols, whatever the case may be. Which means that innately inside the human being is a need for worship. Now sometimes the worship, that need is so strong, it blocks and veils the intellect. All you want to do is, I just need to fulfill that need to worship. Just fulfill that worship. Whether it makes sense or not, who cares? I just want to fulfill the worship. So in the era of Jahiliyyah, before the arrival of Islam, pre-Islamic, as I said several times to you before, individuals now would make idols out of food. Who cares? Who cares? Bring it here. Put it quickly. Let's worship this idol, and if we get hungry, we'll eat the idol for dinner. Comical, laugh. It's embarrassing, but that's the strong need. That strength of the need comes from the fitrah. Okay. Inside the fitrah is a need for justice. So we have on one side pulling us this screaming voice that says, "I need justice. I want justice." Okay. We can see it in our little, in our little day-to-day. If somebody cuts us off, let's say in line at Costco, whoa, buddy, there's a line behind me. This is my spot. I'm not gonna let you come in and take my spot, right? That's my justice screaming. Or something bigger as, of course, this racial movement we see today. Anyways, so on one side, we have this pull towards this need for justice. On the opposite side is we have these animalistic dimensions inside of us. خُلِقَ الْإِنسَانَ ضَعِيفًا. Man was created weak. خُلِقَ الْإِنسَانَ مِنْ عَجَلٍ. Man was created to be haste. We're weak. We're limited. We're haste. We make quick decisions. Sometimes our intellect is veiled. And I don't mean to be negative tonight, but it's a reality. It's a reality. There are some things we just can't do. We can't see it. Right? We live moment by moment by moment. We don't see the entire mission at one moment. So sometimes our decisions are based on a moment and not based on the entire mission. We don't have that basira, that insight that we need to go on the rooftop and see, wait a second, let me see this whole movement right now. If I do it here, this might affect here. A lot of us lack that insight. We lack empathy, right? We're not able to put ourselves in someone else's shoes. If we're better at this, we wouldn't even dare for a moment do dhulm on anybody. Right? Like as Imam Ali alayhi salatu wasalam says very, very, very simply, in a very simple definition of justice, there's elaborate ones in Nahj al-Balagha, but a simple one is that you are to give everything its due. If something has a right on it, it has to make sure that it's given that right. That's justice. When that right is not given, it's injustice. I have every right to stand in this spot, in this lineup. I've been here for 10 minutes. You can't come and take my spot from me. You don't belong here, you belong in the back. Okay? The problem is that when someone else is the victim of injustice, we can't place ourselves in those shoes. It's difficult, it's hard, it's emotionally draining. I can't understand what the person is going through. I don't live their life. And these aren't knocks against a human being, these are just realities of our limitation. We are a limited human being. That's why the Quran reminds us, you are constantly in need. Ya ayyuhan nas antum fuqara'u ila Allah. Wallahu huwa al-ghaniyyul hamid. You are constantly, you're not a faqir, you're a fuqara. You're in constant need. Sigha mubaligha, you're constantly in need. Allah is the needless. Just to make sure you understand, not everything you can accomplish. That's why I sent down the prophets and the imams. That's why Allah says, I've never made this earth, this society, void of my hujjat. So on one side now we have this desire, this need pulling us, I want justice, I want justice. On one side now we have these limitations. What ends up happening is that while the attempt is very, very commendable and respectable, the results aren't there. And thus the need for a divine intervention. Meaning who? Imam al-Zaman. Now, does that mean, and I've already addressed it, but I feel like I need to address it again. Does that mean that, look, if he's going to come eventually, why am I bleeding and crying? And why is it that, when I look at the images of the children of Yemen, it keeps me up at night? It's hard, it's difficult, it's depressing, it gets us down. Like, I don't know about all of you, but I can't look at some of the images that people send me on WhatsApp. I can't. Especially if it deals with any sort of child, 3-year-old, 5-year-old, I can't. My heart can't take it. And that's why there are levels of protest, right? Levels of us trying to achieve our justice. There are some people now who are out there every single day on their Instagram account, they're posting something about some injustice, right? There's a protest every weekend. They are the front lines with the megaphones. They have the place cards. They're out there. Then there are those who quietly, on their musalla, pray for the demise of who? Of the enemies of humanity. Everyone has their levels. Everyone has their own certain way of protest, and we can't judge anybody else. If someone doesn't feel comfortable to be out there on the streets of Toronto, let's say, for example, protesting, we can't say, oh, you don't care. It's wrong. I'm sorry. Your way of protesting is not the only way. There's levels. There's levels. If you're not able to pick up, let's say, a sign and go out there on the front, on the streets of Toronto, or you're not able, let's say, to post something on social media, that's okay. But Allah says, at least feel the pain. Right? The Prophet says, you don't feel the pain, falaysa minna, you're not from us. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense to all of you. Now, one point that's extremely important is this. It's a point I made 2 years ago in my illumination ashra in this very center. I talked about the fact that God, and by extension the deen of Islam, is a process-driven deen. And God is obsessed with the process, not the result always. And while we understand that, when it comes time for justice, we don't quite understand it. Because we get frustrated when we say, look, we've been screaming, I've been posting, I've been retweeting, I've been sharing, but yet it just continues to happen. Sayyid said, what's the point? I'm just going to sit back, stay quiet, and wait for the Imam to come and do his magic. And that's not the way that we want to do it. Right? Afzalul a'mal intidharul faraj, the highest level of a'mal, the most beautiful level of deeds is to wait for the faraj. We know enough to know the deen is a deen of harakat, a deen of movement. It never is asking its believers to be static. Stay where you are. Make sure your yesterday is exactly the same as today. Make sure there's no growth for the past 10 years. No. Even an inch, move forward. Harakat, movement. Your yesterday shouldn't be the same as today, albeit one small inch. If we know that, and this hadith is sahih, that the highest level of worship is waiting for the faraj, well, the act of waiting is a very, very static act, right? If I come out of this building and there's a young guy waiting there on the curb for his parents to pick him up, he's just sitting there waiting, right? He's just sitting there waiting. He might be on his phone. He's just kind of sitting there like this, look. Won't be moving. There's not a lot of movement in him. Then what is the hadith saying? How can the hadith say that this static act, at least on the outside of waiting, is afzalul ibadah, is the highest level of worship? That means that this intidhar, this waiting, has a state to it, right? There's passively waiting, there's actively waiting. right? This kid could be sitting there doing jumping jacks while he's waiting. Then while I'm waiting, let me read the Quran, for example. So while I'm waiting for my bus in the morning, I'll read a few verses. That's actively waiting for the GO train in the morning, okay? This hadith tells us there's no way. If I take this hadith and the idea that the deen is harakat, that means that waiting for the imam has to be an active waiting for the imam. Okay? Means what? It has to be the fact that I buy into the process, even if it means that the result doesn't happen right away. Okay? Look, I'll give you a very simple example. Imam Hussein's entire mission. Imam Hussein left Medina, left Mecca, arrived in Karbala, 2nd of Muharram, sacrificed everything. Tomorrow, the day of Ashura, the ultimate sacrifice. If his process, if he lived on a result-driven process, it should have been that immediately after his head was separated from the body, the Khilafat of Yazid should have crumbled. It didn't. It didn't. That man led for 2 more years after Karbala. Imam Hussein wasn't only about a strictly result-driven reality on the day of Ashura. He was what? He was teaching us a process. That when you are in front of a zalim, this is what you should do. Give everything up, but don't bow your head. Don't accept his rule. No matter what anyone says, don't go, don't go, don't go. Sometimes some of the most respected and revered companions in Medina would tell Imam Hussein, stay in Medina. Let him do his thing in Kufa. Don't, in Sham. Don't give bayat, but stay here. Do your durus, how you have your followers, blah, blah, blah. He rejected that qawl. If that means that we are a process-driven religion, that means that we have to continue now to abide by the process. The results will come. Okay? To give you an example of that, let's look at some verses of the Quran. Okay? Surah Nisa, verse 135. It's a verse I presented to you already in the Ashra. I want to compare that verse with Surah Ma'idah, verse number 8. They're very, very, very similar. There's one specific word in each verse that I really want to focus on. Surah Nisa, verse number 135, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu kunu qawamina bil qist shuhada'a lillahi walau ala anfusikum, right? That all you who believe, be maintainers of justice. Stand up for justice so that you are witnesses for Allah, even if that injustice is against yourself. Walau ala anfusikum. That's Surah Nisa. Now come to Surah Ma'idah, verse number 8, very, very similar verse. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, kunu qawamina lillahi shuhada'a bil qist. Look at the tartib now, okay? The sequence now, okay? O you who believe, be maintainers of justice for Allah, lillahi, for Allah, and be witnesses of the justice. For Allah, be qawameen for Allah. What's my point in all this? My point is that we have to understand what qawameen means. And a little bit of Arabic grammar required. Qawameen comes from qa'im, qiyam, to stand up, to rise up, right? Okay. But here it says qawam. Now there's something called sighah mubaligha in the Arabic language, right? Which means that, I'll give you an example, okay? There's sajda, there's sajid, there's sajjad. Okay? Sajda is to prostrate, to do sajda in salat. Sajid is the one who prostrates. Sajjad is the one who continuously prostrates. Okay? One of the names of Allah is Ghafoor. Not Ghafir, Ghafoor. Right? It's not the one who's compassionate or forgiving, it's the one who is continuously forgiving. Sighah mubaligha. These two verses don't say to simply stand up against justice. It says to be continuously standing up for justice. Okay? Qawameen. In one idea, it's so you can be a witness for Allah. It's one idea where in Surah Ma'idah that you can continuously stand up for Allah, meaning for Allah's mission. Now, if I and all of you now understand that we're not able as human beings to accomplish what Allah wants to accomplish, that He wants to make the mustad'afin leaders in this universe, that we can't do it by ourselves. If He knows the human being is not able to do it, then why is He continuously asking us to continue to rise up, continue to stand up, continue to speak out? Don't stop speaking out. Qawwameen, Sigh al-Mubalagha, Ghafoor, Sajjad. Do it continuously, right? Even if it means that the results won't happen right away. And it's very difficult, I'm sorry, and I get it, very difficult. Sometimes you say, you know what, there's no point, just wrap it up, forget it. But remember, what drives us, what drove those players to get off that court a couple of nights ago, was their fitrah that screams for justice. Now some ignore the fitrah, others say, look, I can't. They didn't have to, I mean, they're making millions, right? What do they care about what happens to Jacob Blake or to George Ford or to anybody else? But they're zamir, they're conscious, right? Force them, say, look, you know what, we got to do something. What we do have in our hands is to boycott. We're the players, we'll stop playing. We're not the owners, we're not the sponsors, we're not the people who give endorsements. We are the players. What Allah is trying to tell us between Surah Nisa and Surah Ma'idah is that you can't leave the process. You can't. Because like I said before, when we adopt the process and we actually become the qawameen, we continuously process, fight for justice in our own respective ways. We are conscious of the injustice around us. When that final victory comes, it'll be a smooth transition into the Imam's government. Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam says very beautifully, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. He says very beautifully. He says that the reality of Iman, min haqiqat al-Iman, the reality of Iman is that you tread the path of the truth, even if it is for that moment detrimental for you, and you avoid the path of falsehood, even if for that moment it's a comfortable path for you. It's easy, right, to just kind of close your eyes and shut off the fitrah and just kind of, drown yourself, intoxicate yourself, put yourself to sleep and say everything is great, there's no problems in this world, no injustice to the world, it's okay, I'm not going to lose sleep over it, I'm not going to rack my brain, I'm comfortable, I'm okay, my kids are great, my spouse is good, that's okay. We can do that. We can do that. But Imam Sadiq says that sometimes walking the path of truth is uncomfortable, it's not easy. But that's the reality of Iman, to not leave that path when the road gets bumpy, right? You're driving to Vancouver from here, across the nation, right? And you hop in a car, you can't wait. You got the road trip, you got the kids, you got the wife, everything is beautiful. Oh my God, you can't wait until your first bathroom stop. You're like, what are we thinking? Why are we on this road trip? Anyways, right? We keep going, and there are moments now where the road is paved, smooth, man. Put it on cruise, leave the wheel alone, take a nap, you ain't going nowhere, you're good. Then there are moments where you're sitting there driving like this, bumpy, potholes, in the mountains, dangerous, really, really steep hills. But we're not gonna say, you know what, this road is too bumpy, let's turn around and go back to Toronto. No, let's get through it, it'll get easier, but don't leave the process. Adopt a process-driven mentality. We live in a result-driven society. You gotta make that switch, guys. You gotta make that switch. Okay, especially when it comes to this. This is a process that will reach its pinnacle peak and its victory with the arrival of the Imam. Okay? Now, 2 more points and then Masaib. To add to this point of qawameen, sometimes I think we use words in the Arabic language. No, let me stop there. There are words in the Arabic language that have multiple meanings. Okay? When it comes to the Imam of our time, we use the word zuhur all the time. Right? The zuhur of the Imam, the zuhur of the Imam, the zuhur of the Imam. And I think sometimes, maybe I'm talking to myself a bit, maybe I think that the zuhur of the Imam means the unveiling of the Imam. When I think of the zuhur of the Imam, I think sometimes the arrival of the Imam. Oh, baby, the arrival, right? And sometimes, because we're so all about the Big Bang, right? Go big or go home, right? So we think about the fact that the curtains will part, or the curtains will rise. Let's say, for example, there'll be confetti, there'll be balloon drops, the dove will be released, for example, the water will start dancing in the stream, and out comes, right, this nur, and the Imam has arrived. This is the Imam Zuhur. I can't wait for the Imam Zuhur. What a moment that's going to be. What's it like, Sayyid Asad? Tell me, what will happen? What will be the signs? Blah, blah, blah. Very little do we ask about life after the arrival of the Imam. We just want to know, what's that bang going to be like? I want to be there for the show. I want to be there for the arrival, the unveiling. Oh, man. That's what I think Zuhur means. That's what I think Zuhur means sometimes, that it's all about the moment. And I just want to be there to experience the moment. Ooh, there's a whole life under him after he arrives. Could there be another meaning of Zuhur? Come to Surah Tawbah. Surah Tawbah, and again, a very famous verse. Allah says, هُوَ الَّذِي أَرْسَلَ رَسُولَهُ بِالْهُدَى وَالدِّينِ الْحَقِّ لِيُظْهِرَهُ عَلَى الدِّينِ كُلِّهِ وَلَوْ كَرِهَ الْمُشْرِكُونَ. Okay? The Arabic, right beneath me, the Arabic in one of the words is لِيُظْهِرَهُ. Now, it reads that he's the one who sent the Prophet بِالْهُدَى وَالدِّينِ الْحَقِّ, with guidance and the right deen, right? So that this deen could what? لِيُظْهِرَهُ عَلَى دِينِ كُلِّهِ. So it could prevail over all the other religions. Now wait a second now. It's the same root word, right? ظهور, يظهره, ظهر, where I think it's a bang, unveiling, confetti. We think, oh, jashan manayenge, qaside padenge, oh my goodness, it's going to be great, the Imam will come. Not that simple. Wait a second now. Hold on 1 second. Hopefully it's like that. And hopefully we get invited to that jashan. But this verse says something else. He sent the Prophet. Here is huda, guidance. Here's the deen haq. But here, zuhur now could mean the prevailing of one thing over another. Not so much the bang of it, but the what? The prevailing of it. Meaning what? Now, we take this Quranic meaning and apply it to the Imam. When we say the zuhur of the Imam, we don't mean the arrival of the Imam, we mean the prevailing of the Imam over everything else. If that's the case, then while we prepare for the zuhur of the Imam, let's not prepare for a party, let's prepare for a prevailing. How do we do that? When the concepts of the Imam begin to prevail inside of me. When we adopt the process of the zuhur of the Imam. And guys, it's taxing, absolutely it's taxing. But imagine now being there beside the Imam. When the Imam now arrives and looks at you and says, you know what, I could use you. You come with me. You've lived your whole life trying to what? Establish the grounds for my arrival. Please come sit beside me. That's all that I want. That's all that all of you want, right? You just want to be marbut, connected with the Imam. I want to be on Team Mahdi. I want to be drafted by him, right? I want to, wear his jersey. So if I walk down the streets, oh, there goes, a member of Team Mahdi over there. I'm like, yeah, that's me over here. Thank you. I might be the water boy. I might be nobody. Who knows? Your job is to lace the shoes of the players. You got it. Yes, sir. No problem. I just don't want to leave your team. Don't trade me, right? Don't do anything. That happens when we prepare for the Imam. The hadith says that relief sometimes is the waiting of relief. Intizar al-faraj itself is faraj, the hadith says. Meaning what? Sometimes the anticipation of relief is the relief itself. Okay? I remember when I got burned in my hand, okay? I got burned in my hand at home. And a lot of you reached out for me for well wishes, and I always love you for all that. I was sitting in Markham Stouffville Hospital for a couple of days, no idea what's going to happen. They're talking about ligament damage. They're talking about nerve damage, possibly amputation of the arm, of the hand, possibly skin graft. All these things, we had no idea. A lot of things were there. We were waiting for the doctor. The doctor will come. The doctor will come. Okay, 1 day, 2 days, doesn't come, until the nurse comes in the morning and says, oh, Mr. Jaffrey, the doctor will be there in an hour. And all the pain of my hand was gone. Why? The doctor will come and he'll tell me exactly what's going on, right? So he's gonna come, and because he's on his way, this pain now becomes a little bit more bearable. It's a horrible, very, very small example, I know, but sometimes when we think that something is on its way, that's half the battle, right? A lot of my mothers right now have daughters at home that they're looking to get married, okay? And they see everybody around my daughter getting married. Her cousins, her siblings, her friends, everybody her age is getting married, but for some reason my daughter isn't getting married. Until you get a phone call from someone in the UK that says, you know what, I have this guy, he's great, I think he's gonna be perfect for you. Let me give you the number, you guys can start talking. Perfect. Now all of this depression, anxiety, kya hoga, kya hoga, kya hoga, hi mere bachi, all that is gone, because why? Just a glimmer of hope that maybe we found a guy for you. Maybe my Shab Qadr Amal has come true. That one little phone call now has removed half of the difficulty. We know he's coming. He's on his way. We see the picture forming. We have this belief. We have this yaqeen. We talked about this for 10 nights, right? Him coming is half of the battle. Don't lose the process. Don't lose hope. Don't let go of that need for justice. Don't only measure the success of your movement by results. Don't. Measure it by your process. Beg to Allah, Allah keep me on this path. Ihdina as-sirata mustaqim is not guide me to the right path, it's sometimes keep me guided on the right path. And adopt the process. Knowing full well, this is the process that my Imam is waiting for. And keep one thing in mind. If your heart bleeds for Yemen, if your heart screams for Syria, Iraq, and Palestine, and Pakistan, and Kashmir, and China, and Nigeria, so does your Imams. If you can't sleep at night, if you're tossing and turning, what do I do, what do I do, what do I do? He knows that he is the solution. Imagine what his heart goes through. And tonight, that same Imam of ours that we are begging for, we are dying for, we plead that Imam choose us beside you, he's in Karbala tonight, crying tears of blood. For tonight is that sacrifice of Hussein's that no father should ever go through. I mentioned in the Abul Fazl Masaib that these are the two that are the hardest for me. They take a lot out of me. And more so, ever since I became a father, I can't sit there and picture Imam Hussein holding Ali Asghar, and Ali Asghar is lifeless. I can't do it. I can't do it. It's hard for me. I'm sure it's hard for you as well. Young men in their 20s going to war and giving their life, I understand. Older ashab and companions giving their life and sacrificing their life in a battle, I can get. Even 13, 14-year-olds, maybe as hard as this, I might be able to understand. But a 6-month-old. And for many, many years growing up, I doubted it. I thought, how can it be possible? It's a 6-month-old. How much of an animal must you be? It's something that can't be right. Until I heard about the stories of ISIS and Daesh recently. I see what's happening to the children in Yemen, the kids in Palestine, the kids in Kashmir. I see what they're doing to the Chinese Muslims in China. And I think that the insan is the insan, hasn't changed one bit, it seems. Imam Hussein alayhi salatu wasalam understands that his Ali Asghar is thirsty. Small little moments that add to the grief and the patience of Imam Hussein. If you're doing something inside of your home and you're busy and your child comes to you and says, Baba, can we play outside in the backyard? I said, look, beta, I'm just doing this right now. After I'm done, we'll go play. Or, Baba, can you help me change my clothes? I go, let's just hold off on that. Okay. Baba, can we color? Maybe after I'm done, we'll color, I promise, no problem. But if my son ever came to me and said, if he ever said to me and said, Baba, can I have a glass of water? It doesn't matter what I'm doing. I would say, he's thirsty. I would go and give him some water. Baba, I'm thirsty. Baba, I'm thirsty. Those words pierced the heart of the father. Imam Hussein now realizes, if I'm thirsty, my Ali Asghar now is almost dying of thirst. He grabs Ali Asghar and walks towards the enemy. My Ustad, it's something I mention every single year, Ustad Tawakkul, I'll never forget this moment. Years and years ago, in my hawza, Dars Akhlaq, every Saturday he sat there and talked about the beauty of Islam. And one day he came during the days of Muharram, and he read a little bit of Musibah. He decided to recite the Musibah of Ali Asghar. And he quoted this image that will never leave my mind. He says that, when a baby wants water, when the baby is hungry, it'll make itself heard. It'll start to wail and scream, move its arms, move its legs. You'll know that it's getting hungry. And the hungrier it gets, the thirstier it gets, the more it makes sound, the more it wails, the more it moves and shakes. But he asked us a question, did you ever stop and think for a moment that nowhere in any of the maqatil, any of the books, Ali Asghar was moving, crying, wailing. In fact, a lot of the poets depicted this moment that he was completely still. How is it possible? And then he says to us that when you take a fish out of water, and it wants to go back in the water desperately, it goes through this chaotic movement from the stomach to its back, from its back to its stomach. When the fish realizes that maybe water won't come right away, it stops doing that. The tail goes left, the tail goes right. When there is this last ditch hope that maybe there is no water, the fish is completely still. The fish mouth opens and it closes. It opens and it closes. Imam Hussein brings Ali Asghar out to the Maidan of Karbala. He's not moving, but some books say that Ali Asghar's lips are opening and they're closing. They're opening and they're closing. I ask you, please give my 6-month-old a drop of water. He's very thirsty. I'll put him down on the ground if you want. Just you come and give it yourself. But nobody moved at that moment when Imam Hussein picked up his 6-month-old. Please give him some water. Chaos ensues, and Umar bin Saad's army, grown men begin to cry. The most stone-hearted men began to melt. Umar bin Saad realized that this might be a revolution. Hurmala quenched the boy's thirst. When Mukhtar arrested Hurmala, when Mukhtar, several years after Karbala, arrested Hurmala, tell me about your role on the day of Ashura. He says, Mukhtar, I shot 7 arrows. 4 of them hit the target, 3 of them missed. Tell me about your 4 arrows. The first arrow, Mukhtar, was that arrow that I shot in Abdullah ibn Hassan's chest on the day of Ashura, the young son of Imam Mujtaba, the younger brother of Janabi Qasim. Tell me about the second arrow. The second arrow, Hurmala, Mukhtar, was the one that I shot in the eye of Abul Fazl Abbas. When Alama Majlisi says that when Abbas fell from the horse, he had no arms to break the fall. He fell on that arrow that was lodged in his eye. Tell me about the third arrow, Hurmala, Mukhtar. The third arrow I dipped in poison and shot in the chest of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein on Asri Ashur. Till Zainabiyah, 70 steps away. Zainab Kubra says, I stood there. All I saw were thousands around my bhaiya, thousands around Hussein. I couldn't see anything, but I could see Hussein's legs moving left, moving right, moving left, moving right, uncontrollably. That was from the poison of Hurmala's arrow. Oh, Hurmala, tell me about the 4th arrow. What do I tell you, Mukhtar? Umar bin Saad tells me, quench the boy's thirst. I sat there and I grabbed the 3-prong arrow I use for animals. I shot it with such fierceness. It pierced one side of Ali Asghar's neck, came out the other, pinning him to Hussein's arm. Imam Hussein grabs the blood of Ali Asghar, offers it to the heavens. The heavens says no. The heavens will collapse, Hussein. Hussein grabs the blood of Ali Asghar, gives it to the ground. The ground says there'll be a zilzal, earthquake. My Mawla takes the blood blood of Ali Asghar, wipes it on his face. He now has Ali Asghar lifeless. Rabab is waiting for him in the khayma. How does he tell Rabab that I took you, our boy, for water, but I brought him back lifeless? My Mawla now, for this moment of weakness, this moment where he was a human, didn't know what to do. How do I do it? What kind of heart do you need? Ask the heart of Hussein. How do I tell this mother of a 6-month-old that now your baby is no longer? He walks a little bit, he stops. He walks back, he stops. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Rabab, come and help me bury our Ali Asghar. The books say that how did Hussein bury Ali Asghar? He took the Zulfiqar, he dug up a grave. He placed his Ali Asghar on the grave. Please, Baqiyatullah, forgive me for this. It's in the Maqtal that Hussein began to bury his 6-month-old. There came a moment where the dirt came up to the neck of Ali Asghar. Only the face could be seen. Some books say that my Aqa Hussein turned his face away from the grave and simply pushed the dirt on. Matam Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein.
असग़र की तशनगी पर आंसू बहा बहा के ज़हरा نے کھا لی کوزے دکھا دکھا کے اب تو ذرا سا دم لے اے گردش زمانہ اب تو ذرا سا دم لے اے گردش زمانہ شبیر شبیر جھک چکے ہیں شبیر جھک چکے ہیں لاشیں اٹھا اٹھا کے شبیر جھک چکے ہیں لاشیں اٹھا اٹھا کے یوں مرتبہ بڑھایا خاک شفا بنایا یوں مرتبہ بڑھایا خاک شفا بنایا کہ مٹی کو خون اپنا تو نے پلا پلا کے اصغر تیرے جھولے میں خاموشی
کیا ڈھونڈ رہی ہے جنگل میں سکینہ کیا ڈھونڈ رہی ہے جنگل میں سکینہ عباس کے بازو یا بابا کا سینہ کیا ڈھونڈ رہی ہے جنگل میں سکینہ کیا ڈھونڈ رہی ہے جنگل میں سکینہ عباس کے بازو یا بابا کا سینہ کیا ڈھونڈ رہی ہے جنگل میں سکینہ عباس کے بازو یا بابا کا سینہ کانوں سے چینے گوہر اور آگ تھی دامن میں گھبرائی ہوئی بچی یہ کہتی رہی رن میں ہے کوئی جو مجھ کو پہنچا دے مدینہ کیا ڈھونڈ رہی ہے جنگل میں سکینہ عباس کے بازو یا بابا کا سینہ رن سے علی اصغر کو لے آؤ میرے بابا سونا نظر آتا ہے بھائی
بھائی کا میرے جھولا اصغر کے بغیر اب مجھ کو نہیں جینا کیا ڈھونڈ رہی ہے جنگل میں سکینہ عباس کے بازو یا بابا کا سینہ یہ شام کے زندہ میں دیواروں کو تکتی ہے کیا سوچ کے یہ جانے دن رات سے سکتی ہے بچھڑی ہے چچا سے جب سے یہ حزینہ کیا ڈھونڈ رہی ہے جنگل میں سکینہ عباس کے بازو یا بابا کا سینہ دنیا سے سدھارے ہیں بھائی جو میرے پیاسے جب تک نہیں لوٹیں گے امو میرے دریا سے میں نے پانی نہیں پینا کیا ڈھونڈ رہی ہے جنگل میں سکینہ عباس کے بازو یا بابا کا سینہ احمد کے نواسے کو مارا ہے محرم میں 40 برس روئے سجاد اسی غم میں تاریخ پکاری ہے غم کا مہینہ کیا ڈھونڈ رہی ہے جنگل میں سکینہ عباس کے بازو یا بابا کا سینہ کیا ڈھونڈ رہی ہے جنگل میں سکینہ کیا ڈھونڈ رہی ہے جنگل میں سکینہ عباس کے بازو یا بابا کا سینہ کیا ڈھونڈ رہی ہے جنگل میں سکینہ عباس کے بازو یا بابا کا سینہ
جھولا جھلاؤں میں تجھے جھولا جھلاؤں تجھے جھولا جھلاؤں میں تجھے جھولا جھلاؤں تجھے جھولا جھلاؤں میں تجھے جھولا جھلاؤں لوٹو سفر سے کہ بڑی دیر ہوئی ہے لوٹو سفر سے کہ بڑی دیر ہوئی ہے بے تاب ہوں کب سے تجھے بے تاب ہوں کب سے تجھے سینے سے لگاؤں تجھے جھولا جھلاؤں میں تجھے جھولا جھلاؤں تجھے جھولا جھلاؤں میں تجھے جھولا جھلاؤں کوئی مجھے بتلاتا نہیں تیری نشانی کوئی مجھے بتلاتا نہیں تیری نشانی برسات میں تیروں کی برسات میں تیروں کی کہاں ڈھونڈنے جاؤں تجھے جھولا جھلاؤں میں تجھے جھولا جھلاؤں تجھے جھولا جھلاؤں میں تجھے جھولا جھلاؤں سوچا تھا تیری سال گرا گھر میں کروں گی سوچا تھا تیری سال گرا گھر میں کروں گی تقدیر یہ کہتی ہے تقدیر یہ کہتی ہے تیرا سو سوگ مناؤں تجھے جھولا جھلاؤں میں تجھے جھولا جھلاؤں تجھے جھولا جھلاؤں میں تجھے جھولا جھلاؤں یہ خون بھرا کرتا یہ مٹی میں بھرے بال یہ خون بھرا کرتا یہ مٹی میں بھرے بال سینے میں چھپاؤں کہ سینے میں چھپاؤں کہ میں آنکھوں سے لگاؤں تجھے جھولا جھلاؤں میں تجھے جھولا جھلاؤں تجھے جھولا جھلاؤں میں تجھے جھولا جھلاؤں
اصغر تجھے میں جھولا جھلاؤں گی ساری رات اصغر تجھے میں جھولا جھلاؤں گی ساری رات بیٹا تجھے میں لوری بیٹا تجھے میں لوری سناؤں گی ساری رات اصغر تجھے میں جھولا جھلاؤں گی ساری رات آ جا کے برہا ہے اندھیرا اے میرے لال خود آ کے دیکھ لے تو ہوا کیا ہے میرا حال روؤں گی ساتھ تجھ کو روؤں گی ساتھ تجھ کو سلاؤں گی ساری رات اصغر تجھے میں جھولا جھلاؤں گی ساری رات اصغر تجھے میں جھولا جھلاؤں گی ساری رات بیٹھی ہوں پاس جھولے کہ اتنا کا سوچ کے ماں کی صدا سے لے کر تو آئے گا لوٹ کے گودی میں تجھ کو اپنی گودی میں تجھ کو اپنی بٹھاؤں گی ساری رات اصغر تجھے میں جھولا جھلاؤں گی ساری رات تقدیر کا یہ کیسا میرا امتحان ہے کس کو بتاؤں مشکل میں اب میری جان ہے اس بے بسی کے آنسو اس بے بسی کے آنسو بہاؤں گی ساری رات اصغر تجھے میں جھولا جھلاؤں گی ساری رات آواز دے رہی ہے سکینہ کہاں ہو تم ماں بہن پہ کچھ تو خدا را کرو رحم کیسے بنا تمہارے کیسے بنا تمہارے بٹھاؤں گی ساری رات اصغر تجھے میں جھولا جھلاؤں گی ساری رات اصغر تجھے میں جھولا جھلاؤں گی ساری رات ڈھونڈوں کہ کیوں گیا ہے میرے لال یہ بتا کیا ماں سے ہو گئی ہے کوئی بھول یا خطا تھے درد اپنے دل کا تھے درد اپنے دل کا اٹھاؤں گی ساری رات اصغر تجھے میں جھولا جھلاؤں گی ساری رات اصغر تجھے میں جھولا جھلاؤں گی ساری رات ہاتھ بیٹھی ہوں جھولے کی دوریاں، دے دے کے تھک گئی ہوں خیالوں میں لوڑیاں، امید کے دیے میں، امید کے دیے میں چلاؤں گی ساری رات، اصغر تجھے میں جھولا جھلاؤں گی ساری رات، اصغر تجھے میں جھولا جھلاؤں گی ساری رات، بیٹا تجھے میں لوری، بیٹا تجھے میں لوری سناؤں گی ساری رات، اصغر تجھے میں جھولا جھلاؤں گی ساری رات، اصغر تجھے میں جھولا جھلاؤں گی ساری رات، یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین یا
رباب میں نہ کہیں جائے لاش اصغر پر، حسین لائے ہیں اصغر کی لاش خیمے میں، رباب میں نہ کہیں جائے لاش اصغر پر، حسین لائے ہیں اصغر کی لاش خیمے میں، تمام بیویاں سکتے میں ہے وہ ہے منظر، حسین لائے ہیں اصغر کی لاش خیمے میں، رباب مر نہ کہیں جائے، حسین کیسے ہے زندہ بتا نہیں سکتا، لہو لوہان وہ چہرہ بتا نہیں سکتا، دل حسین پہ چلتے گئے کس قدر خنجر، حسین لائے ہیں اصغر کی لاش خیمے میں، رباب مر نہ کہیں جائے لاش اصغر پر، حسین لائے ہیں اصغر کی لاش خیمے میں، رباب مر نہ کہیں جائے، حسین نے جو ہٹایا ابا کے دامن کو، سبھی نے دیکھا ہے زخمی علی کے گلشن کو، کہیں سکینہ نہ مر جائے سر کو ٹکرا کے، حسین لائے ہیں اصغر کی لاش خیمے میں، رباب مر نہ کہیں جائے لاش اصغر پر، حسین لائے ہیں اصغر کی لاش خیمے میں، رباب مر نہ کہیں جائے، جگر کے ٹکڑے کی ہاتھوں میں آج میت ہے، تیرے حسین پہ زہرا یہ کیسی غربت ہے، ستم کی دنیا ہے ٹوٹی حسین کے اوپر، حسین لائے ہیں اصغر کی لاش خیمے میں، رباب مر نہ کہیں جائے لاش اصغر پر حسین لائے ہیں اصغر کی لاش خیمے میں رباب مر نہ کہیں جائے اے علی کی بیٹی یہ رو رو کہ بہن کہتی رہی یہ کہہ کے نوحہ پیشے حسین کہتی رہی ابھی تو کہہ بھی نہ پائے تھے ماتم اکبر حسین لائے ہیں اصغر کی لاش خیمے میں رباب میں نہ کہیں جائے لاش اصغر پر حسین لائے ہیں اصغر کی لاش خیمے میں رباب میں نہ کہیں جائے جو واقعی میں ہے انسان ان سے پوچھتے ہیں جو اہل درد ہے رومان ان سے پوچھتے ہیں حسین زندہ رہے کیسے لاش اصغر پر حسین لائے ہیں اصغر کی لاش خیمے میں رباب میں نہ کہیں جائے لاش اصغر پر حسین لائے ہیں اصغر کی لاش خیمے میں رباب میں نہ کہیں جائے آخر میں ہم ہاتھ اٹھا کے دعا کرتے ہیں بی بی فاطمہ سلام اللہ علیہا کے وسیلے سے اور ان کے صدقے میں کہ ہمیں انشاءاللہ کربلا پھر سے بلا لیجئے کیونکہ یہ جو زمانہ ہے ہم کووڈ کی جو میں نے کہا تھا پہلے ہم کربلا جا نہیں سکتے اور دل چاہتا ہے کہ ہم وہیں پر پہنچ جائیں اب عاشور کے دن اور اربعین آ رہے ہیں انشاءاللہ تو یہ دعا ہم ساتھ میں کرتے ہیں اور انشاءاللہ ماتم کو تمام کرتے ہیں زہرا کے صدقے یا رب توفیق یہ عطا ہو مرنے سے پہلے ہم کو دیدار کربلا ہو زہرا کے صدقے یا رب توفیق یہ عطا ہو مرنے سے پہلے ہم کو دیدار کربلا ہو اس خاک کربلا میں شبیر کا لہو ہے سجدہ گزار ہر ایک اشکوں سے باوضو ہے اشکوں سے باوضو ہے پروردگار اپنا وعدہ جو یہ وفا ہو مرنے سے پہلے ہم کو دیدار کربلا ہو اللہ میرے تجھ کو اکبر کا واسطہ ہے صدقہ ہے فاطمہ کا اصغر کا واسطہ ہے اصغر کا واسطہ ہے یہ روح کربلا میں اس جسم سے جدا ہو مرنے سے پہلے ہم کو دیدار کربلا ہو زہرا کے صدقے یا رب توفیق یہ عطا ہو مرنے سے پہلے ہم کو دیدار کربلا ہو اور آخر میں مقطع کا
کہ مولا بحق زینب قسمت میں کربلا لکھ عمران اور صفدر کے نام پر جزا لکھ ہاں نام پر جزا لکھ اب کربلا کی جانب جنت کا راستہ ہو مرنے سے پہلے ہم کو دیدار کربلا ہو زہرا کے صدقے یا رب توفیق یہ عطا ہو مرنے سے پہلے ہم کو دیدار کربلا ہو. آخری بار یہ پڑھتے ہیں بلند آواز سے سب جہاں جہاں ہیں بی بی تک ہماری آواز پہنچے کہ زہرا کے صدقے یا رب توفیق یہ عطا ہو مرنے سے پہلے ہم کو دیدار کربلا ہو دیدار کربلا ہو. الفاتحة مع الصلوات. اللهم صل على محمد وآله.
اللهم أنت السلام ومنك السلام ولك السلام وإليك يعود السلام. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. السلام عليك أيها النبي ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام على الأئمة الهادين المهديين. السلام على جميع أنبياء الله ورسله وملائكته. السلام علينا وعلى عباد الله الصالحين. السلام على علي أمير المؤمنين. السلام على فاطمة الزهراء سيدتي نساء العالمين. السلام على الحسن والحسين سيدي شباب أهل الجنة أجمعين. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك. عليكم مني جميعا سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين. السلام على علي بن الحسين زين العابدين. السلام على محمد بن علي باقر علم النبيين. السلام على جعفر بن محمد الصادق. السلام على موسى بن جعفر الكاظم. السلام على علي بن موسى الرضا. السلام على محمد بن علي الجواد. السلام على علي بن محمد الهادي. السلام على الحسن بن علي الزكي العسكري. السلام على الحجة بن الحسن القائم المهدي صلوات الله عليهم أجمعين.